All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Welcome to today's presentation. We have some guest speakers today to talk to us about Heroku. The title of our presentation today is how to use Salesforce to power apps to increase loan demand for banks and lenders. And if you go to the next slide, go ahead and introduce the panelists today. So I'm John Gamm. I'm a Director of Solution Engineering for Salesforce. I'll be your MC today, taking some of your questions. Mariano Montes de Oca is our resident Heroku expert from Salesforce. He's a principal technical architect. And then our guest speakers are from Launchpad Labs, our partner. Ryan Francis, CEO, and Brett Heilman, a client principal, will be taking us through how Launchpad Labs is put Heroku to use for our customers. We are going to allow you to post some questions to the Q&A. If you see at the bottom, you'll be able to post those throughout the presentation. We're going to hold questions to the end so we can get through the content, but then there will be plenty of time afterwards to read through those questions and allow you to ask some questions live as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ryan, who will take us through the presentation.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. Like John mentioned, I'm Ryan Francis. I'm the CEO here at Launchpad Lab. Brett's going to be doing the bulk of the content today, but I just wanted to kind of introduce Launchpad and who we are before he jumps into the content. So Launchpad, we're a Salesforce partner, been around the ecosystem for just over 10 years now. And we really specialize in application development. So, typically we get pulled in when there's some type of user experience that needs to be built, an app, a portal, a website, or there's some more complex integration and automation work happening in Salesforce. Highlight here today is we're going to be talking a bit about this kind of area of app development as it relates to banks and lending. So excited to dig in there with Brett today. This is just kind of an overview of the different products that we build on as far as Salesforce goes. Our bread and butter and sort of the area of our, kind of where we focus the most is Heroku and Experience Cloud. We're going to be talking a bit more about Heroku here today and how that plays into the use case that we're talking about. So kind of an overview of, for those of you who have never used Salesforce for building applications, this slide kind of illustrates why at Launchpad we love building software on top of Salesforce. And what we really leverage for this is their product called Heroku. And what we really like to think about when we help our clients build any type of technology is we like to help them get into a place what we call a dual engine architecture. And this architecture is really all about empowering your internal teams to operate the business inside of Salesforce using Sales and Service Cloud, as well as all of the other products that Salesforce offers that are more intended for like those internal teams to use. But on the other side of the fence, you have proprietary software that's typically external facing, customer or partner facing. And this is really where Heroku shines. You can have a lot more granular control over the experience, but you don't have to necessarily take on as much responsibility in terms of the infrastructure and development side of things that many companies really today, unfortunately, are taking on more than they should when it comes to software development. And Mariana is going to talk a bit more about that in the Heroku side.
Awesome. Yeah, so Heroku is platform as a service. It's part of the Salesforce platform, and it's built on top of AWS. And what makes it special is that with Heroku, your developers can focus on building apps in the language of their choice, while Heroku manages all other components of software development. So this means that Heroku manages the infrastructure as well as other services that your team will need to build, to test, to deploy, and to scale applications. Additionally, with Heroku Private Spaces, your team can build secure and compliant applications that natively integrate with Salesforce core services via Heroku Connect. All of this means that developers can focus on innovating while Heroku takes care of scale, compliance, orchestration, security, and more. So with Heroku, you can build apps at scale. you don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. For example, Macy's Mobile runs on Heroku. So on Black Friday, if they need more resources, not a problem at all. Heroku takes care of that. And with Heroku, you worry about satisfying your clients with features and count on that infrastructure being there for you. So Heroku provides you with three very distinct and powerful advantages. So it reduces risk by providing things like critical patching, monitoring, and redundancy. And it increases operational efficiency by managing that infrastructure for you while allowing your team to scale globally. Ultimately, Heroku increases your developer productivity. In fact, according to AWS, developers on Heroku are 30 to 50% more productive.
Cool. Is that all you wanted to cover there, Mariano? So we'll get into the bulk of it. Probably why people are here, right? Cool. Well, I appreciate you guys giving the intro on Heroku. I think as we get further in this presentation, I think you'll see why we were talking about Heroku. And I think I could probably try to paint the picture of like where Heroku is going to come into play as you think about generating more loan leads. So yeah, real quick. So John mentioned I'm a client principal here at Launchpad Lab. I come from the banking world. I was a product manager at a digital focused credit union. I've been in the trenches. I was in the trenches for several years, managing digital products mainly within the marketing space. So I have quite a bit of hands-on experience here. Since then, I've become client principal here at Launchpad, and really I've helped a number of different companies, some in the lending space, kind of navigate these waters a bit. So hopefully I can kind of share what I've learned along the way. I'm sure I still have a lot more to learn. But yeah, I hope that I can help you there. I think this presentation is pretty timely in that I also kind of lived through the time of raising rates, right? And I think that in my experience, it was a tough time because we lived in this really great world where we had, what was it, like 2.1% mortgage rates. I'm sure your organic channels were doing great, right? And I'm sure you could probably like back off your Google Ads spend, right? But we just don't live in that world anymore. And I'm sure that, maybe you have some stakeholders or business leaders that are still expecting that same gin funnel that you had when you had 2.1% rates. And, really then you're probably cranking up your Google Ad spend. And I think one thing that I learned within that is, paid spend is a lot harder than organic spend, right? Or organic traffic. So, I think what I'd like to share today is just like how I think you can get the best bang for your buck to try to keep your lead gen funnels up to where you may have had them, a year ago with the good interest rates, whether it's in mortgages or lending for boats, right? I think they all share something in common. And that's really what I want to talk about today. Before we really get into the details, just kind of zooming back a little bit and like how I kind of think about like lead gen in the banking world. I think everyone's seen this, right? The classic demand gen funnel. I think that as we think about the funnel, it works in certain regards. And I think that the concept around like you have a bunch of different things coming into the top of the funnel, it is kind of true in a certain regard. But as I think about the funnel and, in the banking world, I find that a lot of the attention goes to that very bottom of the funnel, right? Which makes sense. I mean, that's when, somebody becomes a customer and you generate revenue from them. But really like the focus of today is, thinking beyond that, because the reality is in the lending space, especially in the mortgage space, no one works through a standard funnel, like especially in the digital world we live in today. People are coming in and out of this and they're not going to go through each stage with you sequentially. And the reality is a lot of people that are probably clicking on your Google Ads that you're paying for probably aren't at the bottom of the funnel. Sure, some probably are. And if you're targeting those keywords, yeah, maybe you're getting some people that are clicking an ad and then converting to applying for a mortgage. But the reality is a lot of them may be top of funnel, right? And one thing I really want to talk about today is how should you be thinking about that audience, right? And how do you not waste your money there, right? And I think it's something I see a lot is people are essentially wasting their money in that they don't have anything, they can't provide any value to anyone else other than the people at the very bottom of the funnel here. And the way I like to think about it is generally, like, I think the funnel is probably broken, especially in the digital world, especially in the lending world, because we have pretty complex sales cycles. You know, it's not, I see a t-shirt, I think it's nice, I put it in my cart and I buy it. Like that's not the world we live in. These are really big life decisions that people are making. Sometimes the biggest financial decision they make in their lives, like getting a mortgage, right? And the reality is they're not going to work through your perfect little funnel. They're going to be coming in and out. There's going to be quiet periods. And I love this concept of like thinking as your demand gen, think of your marketing tools as a flywheel. And I really like this concept. I'm sure, you know, you may have seen it. You may have seen the funnel turned into a circle, which is similar concept. But the thing I like about the flywheel is you put effort in early and you start generating momentum, right? Like think of a flywheel in practice, right? And the goal is that work that you put in early with that person, you still have that momentum when they come back, no matter where they come back into your world, right? They could be early research stage, what we would call top of funnel, right? And the next time you see them could be a year later, we're there at the bottom of the funnel, right? And your hope is that within this flywheel concept, you made an impact that was big enough in the awareness phase that you still have momentum in your wheel, that when they come in to convert, you have that momentum going with you to try to get them to actually become a customer, right? And you know, I think this concept and kind of rethinking like, okay, like not everyone's going to come in top of funnel. They're becoming middle of funnel. They're becoming bottom of funnel. Really like making that mind shift and thinking as more as like they're coming in, you're building momentum, you're providing value. They're going to fly out, right? They're flying out of the flywheel. They're going to come back in 6 months later. You want to still have the momentum going. And I really think like aligning around that concept is going to unlock new opportunities for you. And all of a sudden that ad that you just paid $2 for someone to click on could provide you value in that. That's starting your flywheel with that person. That's starting that momentum. So when they come in and could actually convert and provide value to your company, you have that going for you versus them just coming into a funnel where they have no context, they have no momentum. The idea of them converting at that point is probably pretty slim, right? So thinking on that note, right? So, and really this is the gist of the presentation today is, you know, we need to stop wasting ad money on people that are maybe in awareness phase or interest phase, and you know, give some attention there and focus a little less on the decision phase. Obviously, it's very important for them to make a decision and click, you know, apply for a loan. But you need to try to start to get value out of those people that aren't in that phase. And the reality is a lot of people that are probably landing on your page, and you know, you may have 95% bounce rate and you're maybe wondering why. Part of the reason is like, maybe they're just in awareness phase and the only option you're giving them is to apply. Like, you know, I'm not ready to apply, right? Like I'm still trying to figure out what a mortgage is. Like the last thing I'm going to do is click apply and, you know, go into shopping, right? So as you think about that flywheel, you know, what can you start to build that's like in the awareness phase that's going to start that momentum, right? And one thing I like to really think about here, and based on my experience, is the more particular and specific you get here, the better return you're going to have on your investment of building these tools. So start to think about like, what is unique to my customers, right? What is unique to my region? And some examples I gave here, you know, I tried to be like more specific and regional in that, like, you know, don't just create a first-time home buyer's guide. Create a first-time home buyer's guide for New Yorkers, right? If you're lending in New York City, like, sure, buying a home in New York City is very different than buying a home in the suburbs in, you know, Ohio or something, right? So I think starting to think about what's unique, what are my particular customers or target customers going through in their lives, and how do I align to that is really the gist of this exercise, right? And what are they thinking about a year before they actually click my apply now button? How do I build something that gives them value here. And I think value is the key word there, and that this has to be valuable enough to them that this starts the momentum in your flywheel, right? If it's just like a nice little blog article, the momentum in your flywheel is probably not going to be turning very fast, right? But if it's this custom guide that really kicks them off in their savings journey and really gives them these information that they didn't know about buying a house in New York, like that momentum in your flywheel, that thing's going to be turning, right? And that's probably going to carry you to the point where they're ready to apply. And what you can start to do in this scenario is if you're building these custom flows, and that's really where we're going to start talking about Heroku a little bit, is if you're building these custom flows that are conversational, they're valuable, they're giving them a bunch of endpoints, you've delivered value to them. And then you asking them to give you something in return is much easier, right? And typically that could be an email or a phone number, right? If I get value from that and you start sending me emails, I'm not going to resent you for that. And that's a problem that a lot of people run into, is they ask for an email very early without delivering much value. And all of a sudden you start hitting my inbox and I start to resent you for that. But if you delivered value and I know that you deliver good content, you've started me on my buying journey. When you start sending me an email every month for, here's what you should be starting to think about, you're probably getting closer to buying a home. Like that's going to be way more well received because it was a fair exchange, right? And what you could start to do there is if you learn a lot about them early, let's say you take them through like, how much do I need to save questionnaire for someone buying a home in Texas where property taxes are really high, right? And property taxes is so much a part of the equation as you think about buying a home in Texas and affording it month to month. If you really paint that picture for them, you get some valuable information from them early. It'd be like, how much home do you want to buy? That's a pretty good data point to have as a marketer, right? When they come back and they are in the interest phase, like they left you, they went back, they're like, okay, yeah, I think, this 500K thing is close to where I want to be. You can give them that, right? Like this is a flywheel thing. Something about them, they come back. If you build your systems correctly, you already know something about them, something's very valuable. You can align to that. Show them a monthly payment calculator that's for 500K homes in Texas when they land on your page. Don't show them a calculator for California, right? You can really start to paint this picture and go on this journey with them from the start and not waste your ad spend where they're just hitting your page, not seeing anything they can align to and bouncing, right? So that's really the concept we're going for here. So let's look at some examples. I just pulled some screenshots from the internet. Obviously there's more page here. But here's a pretty good example of, this page, and there's some other stuff on this page, it's really just text. This page is pretty much just focused on the conversion, right? Yeah, there's a contact us, but if I'm early on, like I'm a year out from buying a house, I'm probably not going to hop on a call with your MLO, right? I'm definitely not going to apply. So when I looked at this page and I put myself in the shoes of the person that's like, I'm thinking about buying a house, guess what I would have done? I would have bounced. I wouldn't have interacted with anything on this page. I would have bounced and probably forgot about this company 5 minutes later, right? Their only hope is that when I go to make that purchase, I find them again. Like that is their only hope in this equation. And hopefully their ad spend is enough at the time a year from now that they would recapture me. But that's a pretty tough gamble to make, right? I'd much rather capture my contact information early and provide me value. And then, we're building a relationship via an email campaign, or, we're doing other things. And it really, we're building this relationship that when it comes to the point where I'm applying, I'm top of mind. The company's top of mind, right? Here's an example of a company that I think is doing it well. Some of you may recognize this website. Right here, like this is meeting people where they're at. This company is recognizing, hey, like people landing on this mortgage page, like may not be ready to apply, right? So this is, probably a little bit of a generalization that bucketing people into 3 people. I think people go through way more stages than 3 when you're thinking about a mortgage or a big purchase. But this is a pretty good start, right? Like, okay, I'm just researching. I'm going to go here. I'm going to explore his tools. I'm going to get some value out of this. I'm kind of looking. right? Like you're kind of meeting me in that weird point where I'm kind of looking, I'm kind of trying to make a decision, or like I'm ready to go, right? Like get my personalized solution ready to go. This is really kind of where you want to get to, is that you're just meeting people where they are. And I thought this was a pretty good example of that. So how do we do it, right? Let me check my time. How are we doing on time? We're doing pretty good. Cool. All sounds good, right? You're gonna meet people at top of funnel, middle of funnel, right? You're gonna build a bunch of stuff. I've been in this world before. I mean, a lot of you, I'm probably just preaching to the choir here. You probably already know, like, hey, I don't have anything for a top of funnel person to convert, you know, like maybe give me an email address. I've been there. And I know that, like, yeah, we want this, but like sometimes we can't do it. Like, you know, like maybe our current website just can't handle this. Like we want to build this cool conversational flow, but we're on like kind of an old WordPress instance that like is super clunky, and like making it try to work for this would be really hard, right? Or trying to connect it into Salesforce would be really tough, right? Or maybe you're limited by some other system, right? Maybe your online banking system limiting you, you know, whatever it may be. I found one way to get away from that is, can you isolate this thing, right? Like, can you just think about this as like a separate little application you're going to spin up that's going to be heavily integrated in with your marketing tools, specifically like your CMS, right? You know, your Salesforce. If you kind of think that way, I find that sometimes you may unlock some opportunities where you think, let's work outside of our infrastructure. I know there's some risk to that. Like you're introducing some new tools, you're probably introducing some new skills and some new team members. But if you leave the constraints of your existing systems, I think you'll find that a lot of opportunities get unlocked. And that's kind of what we're thinking about here, where it's like, you know, maybe your current CMS, your current website build just can't handle this cool conversational concept you're coming up with like helping guide people to buying their first yacht, you know, their first big like boat or something, right? How you could kind of think about that is that could be a separate little application that lives on a subdomain of your current website that you drive people to. And Heroku is bring it back to Heroku. Heroku is a really good option for doing something like that, especially if you're already integrated into Salesforce. Because the reality is, like, you're going to need that data. This is step one. Getting that contact information, getting that information on people is step one. You're going to need to then enable a whole exercise or a whole set of solutions and marketing campaigns around those things. And in this equation of dual engine architecture that Ryan introduced is like Heroku, Salesforce, it's a pretty good combination to spin up these like little side applications that are doing something for your customers, right? So kind of doing the art of the possible here. Here's a scenario that I kind of think could be possible, right? Let's say we spin up a help me choose tool for home lending, right? We're going to gather a bunch of information in that, right? We're going to ask them about, you know, home price, how much equity they have, determine if like home equity loan is appropriate, what they're trying to purchase, like what they're trying to do with it. You're going to get a lot of good information in that. You're going to want to get that into Salesforce. Heroku Connect makes that super easy, right? This is a by sync of database, by sync being a key word there. And, you know, going back to the example we talked about before, where like, you know, they said 500K early on. 6 months later, if you want to put 500K at the start of their loan application, that could be pretty slick. And Heroku Connect can enable that because you have this by-sync communication between Heroku Salesforce. But really, the concept here would be, we have this help me choose tool. We're pushing that data into Salesforce. It's going into like an account record object, or going into like a CDP system if you have CDP in Salesforce. Then you unlock a whole suite of possibilities, right? Say you're a marketing cloud, you know that, you know, maybe people that do a help me choose, maybe they're converting 3 months from now, typically. Put them on a 3-month journey in your marketing cloud, you know, journey builder. Say you have Interaction Studio. So many possibilities with this, right? All of a sudden you have interactive content on your website, right? So you know this thing, you know this person is really interested in a boat loan. When they come to your website, your homepage shouldn't be pushing mortgages to this person. Your homepage should be pushing a boat loan to this person, right? And Interaction Studio, having that content, having that data in Salesforce is going to enable that. And that all comes from your little Heroku application you built that's sitting over here, right? So that's kind of how that concept could kind of work here. And I know we said questions till the end, but I think this is super relevant. Kind of on the Heroku Connect question. Mariano, maybe you want to take that one around. The question was around, like, as we think about buy sync between Heroku and Salesforce and how Heroku Connect works. Can you maybe go into that a bit more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question was around Heroku Connect, whether it is real time or if it is a batch job. So Heroku Connect can sync your data near real time. So it will use the streaming API. So your changes will reflect in near real time. We're talking somewhere around 20-30 seconds. And just to elaborate a little bit more, Heroku Connect allows you to bidirectionally synchronize the data. So that means that changes in Salesforce will reflect inside of Heroku, meaning Heroku Postgres, and changes that, for example, in this use case that your app makes to that Heroku Postgres database will be then reflected inside of Salesforce as well.
Cool. Thanks, Mariano.
Absolutely.
So if you start going down this journey, and let's say you do identify an opportunity, going back to my example of, like a help me choose tool for home lending, right? I think the question you should ask at some point in that, and I have the slide at the end that kind of goes through like what I recommend your kind of flow being as you think about this. One question you're probably going to ask is, do you build this or you buy it, right? And I think it's a very fair question. I think there's pros and cons to each. I think some things I'd probably highlight as you think about, like, should I build this thing from scratch, or should I go and, there's plenty of pre-built solutions out there that would be like a calculator or something, right? There's a couple of questions I'd really be asking in that. And I think one would be, is there something unique that you're trying to capture in your flow, right? Is there something unique around like lending in New York City, for that example I put up? A lot of times pre-built solutions don't capture those things well. And really, we live in a pretty crowded space here, and you have to be unique. You have to deliver unique value. And if you're going to get a watered down solution from your pre-built solution, it may not be the route to go. However, if you find a pre-built solution that meets those unique needs and also syncs well with your systems, maybe that's a good way to go, because it's definitely going to probably get you to market quicker. Typically, if you have to tweak that pre-built solution a ton, sometimes it's a bit slower. But really, if you find a solution that captures what you're trying to get from the customer, it syncs in well with your your Salesforce, and it kind of would capture the uniqueness of your brand and what your customers are going through, it could certainly be a good option. But I think if the answer is like, no, it doesn't really, and you're going to get something watered down from it, I really don't think it's worth your investment, because you're going to look like every other company out there. Custom built, it's going to take more effort typically, right? But the reality is like, if you do identify some unique opportunity here, capturing that with a custom solution is always going to go better. So that's kind of how I think about it. Is like, how unique is my situation? Certainly evaluate what's out there for third parties and pre-built. But then I think you really just need to like gut check yourself of like, is this going to feel watered down? Is this going to capture our initial objectives? And I think it's going to help you start to identify, what route really makes sense for you. All right, let's sum it up. Yeah, we have plenty of time for questions. Cool. Where do you start? You may already be going down this journey. You may already know that you're not capturing your top of funnel people. You may already be building solutions for them. You may already have solutions for them. But let's say all you have is an apply now button on your website for your whatever loan you're offering. Where do you start? Step one, I can't emphasize this enough. Go talk to your customers. I know sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes you don't want to do it. Sometimes it's easier to just make an assumption that you know what they need. but I can't emphasize this enough, or at the very least, go talk to the person that's talking to your customer every day. You're in mortgages, go talk to your MLOs. Go talk to your, whatever lending officers you may have. Better yet, just go talk to the customer. A lot of times your existing customers are best here, especially new ones. New ones are still excited about the exchange. Hopefully it went well. They're willing to give you some feedback. Give them a $20 Amazon gift card for 10 minutes of their time. Hop on a call, really understand their journey, right? Understand, ask some questions like, where did you start? Like you bought a home with us. I'm sure you started thinking about this a long time ago. What were you thinking about? What questions did you have? Where did you go to get answers for that? Start to understand what their journey looks like. And I think if you do that don't have to do this a ton. I found interview 5 people, you're going to probably recognize a trend that you would get if you interviewed 100. Talk to 5 people, understand their journey, see where they're similar, understand like what questions are unanswered in the space, and start to identify your opportunities from that. I can't emphasize step 1 here enough. I see it over and over where, somebody in the business just makes an assumption like, we need this thing. Why? Do we have proof? Do we have proof that we need this thing, right? And a lot of times having interview data, having actual customers tell you they would use this thing is going to provide a lot of relief to everyone as you go to make this investment, because somebody's going to challenge you at some point and say like, hey, are you sure we should be spending money on this? This seems like it's not that important. You can go back to that interview data and say, here, like I have people that are customers that said they would use this thing and give us an email that would enable us to do all these cool things in marketing, right? Having that data point is so critical to get buy-in for this, right? Once you do that, go through your interview data, identify your opportunities. What's missing in the market? What are they looking for? What questions are they asking? And just start to like conceptualize like, okay, like seems like they had a lot of confusion around like what type of loan to get. What can we do for them there? Is it a little quiz, a little questionnaire that asks particulars about their situation and we kind of recommend one, but also explain the others? Maybe it's like a help me choose type thing. Start to just like conceptualize there. And then once you start to like narrow in our concept, start to align on objectives, both the customers and the businesses, right? The customer wants to achieve this and this and this from this flow. The business wants to achieve this, this, and this from this flow. You got to meet both to get buy-in, right? Align on your objectives and then go in and evaluate your potential solutions. First, like I mentioned, you go look at your existing systems. Can our current CMS website do this, right? No, or maybe, but it's going to take a lot of work. Like start asking those questions, weighing how much is it going to take to stretch this thing to build something that's going to meet our objectives versus like, maybe we should start from scratch, right? Go out and evaluate those. If the answer is, we didn't find a good third-party solution, or our CMSs our current platform's archaic and you can't do anything on it, then you may want to start going down the custom solution route. And that's where we come in, right? We can help you start to navigate those waters a bit. We can find, what are your easy wins here? We love crawl, walk, run here. What's our crawl? What's our crawl version of this Help Me Choose tool? Let's get that out there. Let's start testing it. Let's see what your reception is. Let's see what data we can capture from people. What's the drop off? How do we tweak it? Then we get into walk, right? We're starting to tweak it. We're starting to make it work well. Run, we've eventually got this whole thing that does all these cool things. You've got like 2 journeys you're kicking off. You're going on SMS campaigns, right? But really, we can help you identify like, how do you prove this concept first in a custom build? And then how do you iterate on it from there? That's all I had.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. That was great. So got a couple questions. So just kind of coming off of the back of your description there of where to start. So Heroku itself is a technical tool. It's a platform to build these starter applications or these ways to help build demand generation or do a number of different things. So it seems like the customer, if the company's out there, for somebody who's in IT, or for some of the people from Salesforce on the phone, who are thinking to themselves, well, there might be some companies out there who have some good ideas of what they want to do now, and now they're looking for something to help them build it with Salesforce in mind. But what if they don't really have ideas like that now. What have you, and for anybody who's on the panel, any thoughts as to what parts of a business tend to be the best people to engage first from a business standpoint to start to have these conversations about what they may want to do to change the way they're offering their mortgages or their loans, and get some ideas on how to draw people into the top of the funnel and start to use a tool like this to help them? Is it marketing? Is it contact center? I mean, where do you kind of find people who are willing to engage and want to engage in that kind of conversation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One thing I used to do back when I worked in the banking world is I used to just go sit in the contact center like every other week for like an hour. I found, people that are on the ground, whether it's doing service for your loans or originating loans, I find that they're very willing to share information, and they're kind of begging for someone to come ask them for their opinions, because their opinions are probably the most important, because they know the most about your customer. I'd say the only opinion that's more important than theirs is the customer's opinion, right? So I find that's where I like to start, John. Like, go to the people that are on the ground and get their opinions first. Better yet, just go to the customer. But if you can't go to the customer, go to them, get their opinions. I'm like, hey, what are you hearing? Like, go to a mortgage loan officer and say, hey, like, for the people that like aren't ready to do business with us, what are they asking? Like, what questions do they have? I find that engaging them early could help you identify your opportunities. And then as you think about like solutioning, really, like, your marketing team probably has a set of tools that you should maybe look at first, right? Doing something within like your core system or like your main IT group, I find in the lending world is pretty tough, right? Like, if you touch a core system, like, you're in for a year-long project, right? So typically I like to look at marketing tools that are available. Like, how do you guys build stuff now? Can we build like the separate application, right? So as you get into solutioning, I think that that's where I'd go to kind of start, picking brains a little bit and getting some ideas. But really, like, on the opportunity side, get as close to the customer as you can, for sure. Is that kind of where you're going with that question, John?
Yeah, it sounds like, if what we're trying to do is use Heroku to build custom applications that will help a potential customer while they're in the process of researching or thinking about getting a loan, then the question is, what would help them? What can we make available through an app? And who might have those ideas if the company doesn't already have those ideas now? What can we bring to them? Whether I'm somebody in IT working for a bank right now that I want to come up with something, or if I'm somebody who's positioning Heroku as a potential solution. Just where do we get these? What makes the difference for a bank that does a good job of this versus one that doesn't?
Yeah, for sure. I find that, like, once you get into the solutioning part of it, it gets tough. Like, it's hard to navigate. Like, it's hard to weigh, like, oh man, how much time is this going to take to try to use this thing versus building custom? I think my recommendation is just, like, at that point, you can reach out. Like, we're typically happy to take those calls, and we take a lot of calls where we tell them, maybe you should just use this existing system, right? Like, custom probably doesn't make sense for you. Like, we do that pretty often. So if you identify an opportunity, there's an opportunity there, you want to build something, but you're not sure how to go about it. And maybe you don't have like all the product building chops in house. Say just reach out, right? And we can help you navigate that too. And I'm sure like Salesforce AEs can help them navigate that as well too. So.
Thanks. Again, for anybody on the line, if you have a question, please just go to the bottom of your screen and type it into the Q&A, and I'll raise your hand and I'll take you off. But we have one more question. Just how long does it typically take to build a Heroku app like something that you showed us earlier? Is there a typical, or does your mileage vary?
I'm going to let Ryan take this. I've been doing this now for 2 years here at Launchpad. Ryan's been doing it for 10. So
definitely been doing it for a while. Yeah. So our average project duration really ranges anywhere from like 12 to 18 weeks. And it totally depends on the situation. And but most projects like kind of fall into that range. And usually if it's a bigger project, we would just kind of put like a slightly bigger team on it, but the duration would still be somewhere in that like maybe 16-week type duration. Usually you have like maybe a 4-week upfront phase around setting the foundation, designing the software, getting some alignment on the data model and the integration with Salesforce. You might go into like 10 weeks or so of 8 to 10 weeks of feature development, building out the actual user experience, really having those high fidelity features, and then a few weeks at the end for like QA, polishing the application, and then deploying. That's typically the kind of the lifespan of a project.
Thank you. And I do see we have another question, so let me go ahead and pull that up. So the question comes from Block again. Do we follow the SDLC approach, agile, waterfall, sprint planning, etc.?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can also maybe take that as well. So as far as like agile versus waterfall, we're big fans of agile at Launchpad. What we've one of our kind of core philosophies is to get real fast. And a lot of times what we see companies do is they spend too long in planning mode, especially in the financial space where, waterfall, maybe like companies have been around for a while, maybe used to deploy waterfall, getting familiar and really buying into agile can be kind of difficult. But what agile really lets you do is it lets you achieve that 12 to 16 week type timeframe on a project. Without waterfall, without agile, I mean, a lot of times I see businesses spend months in design and planning mode before they actually build anything. And many times, like where you learn the most when you're building a product is in the stage where you're actually building the product. And so getting started early is really important. I think the sweet spot is, you spend a little bit of time, maybe 3 weeks up front and kind of like planning an alignment phase. And then you're moving into some type of development. It could even just be laying the foundational like data structure and things like that. But I wouldn't wait longer than 3 weeks to get started into actually building. And then on the agile side, we like to think about like kind of fixed time, variable scope. So as we jump in, it's hey, here are the big things that we want to make sure we hit within our 12-week cycle, whatever the time frame is. And as we go and as we're deploying features, we're going to be kind of debating and helping to align on what's the version of this product that's doable within 12 weeks. And each feature, there's going to be trade-offs on maybe we can make this feature drag and drop down the road, but for now, let's just do a drop down because we're going to be able to do that within our current timetable. So agile is really all about like being open-minded and having more of a partnership when you're building versus waterfall. What tends to happen is there's sort of a, hey, you have to get all of these things done and at a certain time and cost, and there's no like flexibility. And that really results in like, people committing to things at a time when they know the least about what they're doing, which is at the beginning of a project. So it's really great to be able to, as you go through a collaborative process, be able to make changes and trade-offs with the product decisions.
Great.
Like one thing I may add to that, Ryan, just coming from my experience in the banking world, 12 weeks is nothing in banking, right? Like at least my experience is everything tends to move a bit slower than you think. I think one thing I like about this concept of like spinning up these separate applications on Heroku that are outside of your like standard infrastructure, they're not like doing big core integrations or anything. I think based on my experience, I found that like getting approvals and getting the go ahead to like do something like that is a lot easier than if you're trying to like build something onto some existing system that has a ton of stakeholders, then you're going through like steering committees and all that. So as you think about like time frame for like the internal person, like thinking about it as this isolated incident, I found personally that it unlocks the potential. Yeah, you could build something in 12 weeks, which is pretty awesome, for like a custom application, especially in a world that's like highly regulated and has a ton of interdependencies. If you think about it isolated a bit. So.
And just to kind of add on, I know Mariano mentioned kind of the speed to market aspect, but I can't really underscore that enough in the high compliance industries with Heroku. The reason we started using Heroku 10 years ago was because we wanted to be able to focus on actually solving our clients' problems, which tended to be more about building whatever user experience they wanted to deliver, as opposed to setting up, networking rules and security groups and all the things that go into infrastructure. And as you move up in compliance requirements, complexity in that infrastructure goes up as well. So this is where, being able to, in a Heroku environment, in one click, have a compliant environment to deploy innovative applications, it really does shift the conversation away from, oh, we're going to have to invest a year to build something, to actually we can get something up pretty quickly, like maybe even a first version in 8 weeks. That's like a lightweight, version of the product. Within 4 weeks of our delivery team starting on a project, we have some things on Heroku working, right, in a live environment that's totally compliant and with whether it's PCI or if you're working towards something like HIPAA compliance. Heroku has their private spaces product as well as their Shield product are awesome for quickly being able to stand those kind of environments up, which we have done our fair share of standing up these type of high compliance environments on infrastructure as a service like AWS. And it just takes a long time to configure all the right rules and get the VPCs set up and the subnets and all of that stuff that you just don't have to think about with Heroku. So I just want to highlight time to market in Heroku is, for us is kind of like, necessary in order for us to be quick with our projects.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. That's the end of our questions at this point. So just like to leave you all again. Thank you, Ryan and Brett and Mariano, for presenting today. And thank you all for joining. As a call to action here, if you have the opportunity, schedule a joint discovery call with Launchpad Lab by reaching out to your Salesforce account exec. And if you have any other questions about any of this, you can feel free to contact me, John Gam, at that email address you see down there. We've also recorded this session and we'll be making it available internally. But if there are any other questions that come up later, feel free to contact me and I'll be happy to direct them to the right person. So once again, thank you very much to our panelists, taking the time to talk to us about Heroku. And thank you all for joining. And we'll hope you all have a great day. Talk to you later.
Thanks, John.
Thank you all.